Today we're going to talk about some really unhelpful statements that I have seen thrown around the online homeschool community and just address them with hopefully a little bit more grace and nuance and helpfulness. So if you're interested, keep watching. Hello and welcome here. My name is Christine. If you're new here, I'm a second generation homeschooler and I've been homeschooling my own kids for about 6 years now. And I was a homeschooler myself way back when we had dial-up internet and had to ship all of our books to the bottom of the world here in New Zealand. I'm sure it cost my parents a fortune, but I'm very, very grateful that they did that for me because, oh my goodness, homeschooling has been the biggest blessing in my life and I hope to continue that legacy with my kids and the connection and all of that good stuff. So if you are new here, I'd love it if you would subscribe. I share all my experience with what we're doing. I am certainly not an expert in the homeschool field. I'm just sharing real life and things that work for me and things that don't, curriculum reviews, just the ups and downs of homeschooling. So I'd love to have you along. Please subscribe. Today, we're going to be talking about what could potentially be a little controversial. I have seen these statements thrown around the online homeschool community a lot. And there have been some beautiful blessings that have come with the internet and social media as far as homeschooling. But there's also definitely a downside to it. There's definitely a lot more comparison. There's, comparison's like the main thing, or like just overly romanticizing things to the point where it's actually dishonest, because real life homeschooling does not look like the Instagram squares, the beautiful, curated reels. That's just not real life. But at the same time, homeschooling is wonderful and it can look beautiful some days and other days it looks like chaos. So yeah, I just want to talk about this because I want to be an encouragement to you if you're brand new to homeschooling and you're feeling daunted and overwhelmed by these curated feeds. But also if you're in the trenches of homeschooling and you have been for a while and perhaps you're feeling a bit discouraged that you're not doing things the right way or whatever your situation is, the point of this video is actually to be an encouragement. It's not to be critical or self-important because, oh my goodness, there's nothing more humbling than making like grand statements online and then having to eat your words years later, So I really am addressing this from a place of wanting to help because I've been around for a little bit. I've been in the community a while and people can say things like they're the absolute truth when they've been homeschooling for just a hot minute. And people tend to share things that worked really well for them and say, this is the only way to do it because it works so well for me. But we fail to realize that we're all different and unique and one thing is not going to necessarily work for another. So that's the caveat that I wanted to share before I move on to the points. So let's get into it because I don't want to blab too much. First of all, the first point that I see so often said, and actually this is quite commonly stated in New Zealand, where I'm from, and that is like life skills over curriculum. And I just don't understand the statement first and foremost. I don't understand why we have to choose between teaching our children life skills and using curriculum, or not just curriculum, but like life skills are more important than academics. And I just think that's such a silly statement to make. I can understand where it comes from because a lot of kids graduate school, knowing how to do complex algebra, but can't do basic life skills. But I also want to just challenge parents who have this mindset that it's actually not the school's responsibility to be teaching our children life skills. I just don't agree with that mindset at all. That is a parental responsibility. No matter how you educate your child, whether they go to public school, private school, or homeschool, it's your responsibility as their parent to be teaching them life skills. I do not expect anybody else to teach my kids how to take care of a home, how to take care of the things they've been given, how to interact in society. That's not anyone else's responsibility but my own. And I do think that's really important that we acknowledge that first and foremost. But the second thing is that you don't actually have to choose between teaching your children academics or life skills. They can actually be done beautifully together. And I don't think that one is more important than the other. I think they're equally as important because academics play into life skills, and life skills are like, if you're just all academics and have no life skills, that can be a real disadvantage as well. So this whole mindset of like no, we're not going to do any academics because what we really need in life is to know how to do all these things. I just think we can do both. There's plenty of time and room and space to do both. I mean, my kids, we do a full school day, 4 days a week. We are doing school from around 8 a.m. through to at least 12, sometimes 12:30, 1 o'clock, just depending on how the day is going. We have breaks in between, but it's a full school day. My kids are doing full academics. They also know how to do their own laundry. They know, my son mows the lawns for us. My kids know how to bake and make some basic dinners and meals. They can go down to the corner shop and purchase something without me even being there. They know how to exchange money. They know how to do all of those things. And none of that was in their curriculum. That was just all life skills that we've taught them through daily living. So we really don't need to segment things. I know it's human nature to want to do that. We like to compartmentalize and put things in tiny little boxes, but that's just not necessary. We don't need to do that here. We can just teach our children life skills as we're doing life with them, and also teach them academics. So you really don't have to make a choice. You can do both. Number 2, this is quite possibly the thing I see said the most online, and that is, if you start school too early with your child, you're going to kill their love of learning. Look, I get it. I do think there are parents who put unrealistic expectations on their little 2 and 3-year-olds, expecting them to sit down and do lessons, and then get really frustrated when their attention span is just not there for that. However, blanket statements like, you're going to kill their love of learning if you get them to sit down and do a worksheet are just incredibly unhelpful and honestly just untrue. I have 3 kids who are all very different, who all learn in different ways, who have all required different things from me when it comes to their education. And if I just went by blanket statements, I would be doing them a great disservice. My eldest daughter, who's my middle child, wanted to do school at age 3, big to do school at age 3, and actually her younger sister has as well. They love to sit down and do handwriting. My son, no, not so much. And I had to take different paces with each of the kids. My favorite thing to say to homeschool parents is to homeschool the child that is in front of you. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Look at your child, see what they need, and focus on that. Because if I had followed the advice of, just don't teach them anything, I would have had miserable kids, and it would have been actually a lot harder. So it's a silly blanket rule. It's not going to destroy their love of learning if they are wanting and willing to do school. It's also not going to destroy their love of learning if they do not enjoy everything that they're doing. I have one child in particular who is very strong-willed, and I've had to work hard to teach expectations. This is what we're doing today, and this is the routine that we're going to have. We might not get a lot of academic work done at all, especially in the early times, but just learning that what mom says is what goes is a really important foundation to your homeschool, because if you don't nail that down when they're younger, it's a lot harder when they're older and they have to do things that are really necessary but they don't enjoy because they lack the respect for you and they don't want to do what you're telling them to do. Again, blanket statement, unhelpful. If your child is asking to do school, give them schoolwork to do. It's not going to kill their love of learning. It's just not. Number 3 is that conflict destroys relationships, which I'm kind of like bottling that down a little bit in comparison to how it's actually said online. But you'll hear things like connection over curriculum or character over academics. And I totally understand the heart of this. I do, because I think it's foolish to ignore the character issues and just try and push academics. However, I think sometimes homeschoolers are falling into the trap of thinking that if their child is not enjoying something or is pushing back on something, that they need to switch curriculum or just drop a subject or whatever because that conflict is causing issues in their homeschool. And I just want to challenge you to reframe your way of thinking about it. If there is conflict in your homeschool, it doesn't mean that the resource that you're using with your child is wrong. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing school with your child. I want you to consider it a learning opportunity for character development with your child. Sometimes that does mean changing the resources that you're using or reframing things or whatever, but sometimes it means sitting down and having a chat with your child and being like, this behavior is unacceptable. This is not what we do in our home, and these are the requirements and expectations for you. My children know that their schoolwork is not optional. It's non-negotiable as far as we do school on school days. That is what happens. Now, there is room for grace and negotiation if they're really struggling with something and they know they can come to me about that. If I can see they're really frustrated with something, of course I alter it, or they know that I'm right there to help them through it. I'm not going to leave them to just try and figure things out all on their own with all this frustration. But the idea that conflict is going to ruin relationships, it could be true if you handle it in the wrong way, but it is not an inherent truth. I can tell you that there was lots of conflict in my home when I was being homeschooled and my mom did not know how to explain algebra to me because she didn't do high school math. There was a lot of conflict. There were some yelling matches over the dining room table. And I am here to tell you that my mother is my best friend in adulthood. She was not my friend when I was a child. That's not what she was there for. She was my mom first and foremost. But as adults, oh my goodness, my mother's the one I want to tell everything to. Outside of my marriage, she's like the next person I would want to go to with things. And I would say that all of my siblings have the same kind of relationship with my parents. And there was definitely conflict there over homeschooling and life in general. But my parents were humble and they apologized when they got things wrong. We knew that we could go to them about anything and we were able to work through those conflicts. So please do not think that if there is conflict in your homeschool that you're doing something wrong. The reality is that we're dealing with imperfect humans and we're all going to fight. We all have a selfish nature. We want our own way. We don't want to do the hard things. But that doesn't mean that there's something wrong. And the Instagram reels are not going to show that. They're not, because it's not ethical to be showing your child throwing a tantrum about having to do math and putting it online. Like, that's just wrong in every way, shape, and form. And so you're not going to find content creators putting that out there. I would never show my children in that light, but that doesn't mean it's not happening behind the scenes. It's very difficult to convey that online. So just be aware that when you see those pretty homeschool days with the nature study and all of that, I can guarantee you that at least one of those kids has been unhappy about something and has pushed back and there's been some conflict in the home, because that's reality. That happens every single day. The key is to see it as an opportunity for growth for both you and your child and more connection. Number 4 is that scheduling is unhelpful, that it is going to do a disservice to your family. And oh my goodness, I'm the queen of schedules. I love them. I love planning. It just itches my brain in just the right way. It makes me very happy. But I will say that rigid scheduling will do a disservice to your family. However, flexible scheduling that is done from the perspective of how to serve your family can be such a wonderful thing. Now, here's a little bit of rationale behind that, and while I'll push back on this whole idea of like just free ranging the day, just doing whatever you want, kids thrive with structure. I have found personally that in the early years, I really like to work on rhythm and routine with my little ones, my preschoolers, because once we've got that down, their little brains know what's happening next. They know what to expect. They know that at this time of day, we sit down and we do this. And at this time of day, we have quiet time. And this time of the day, it's dinner time. And they start to expect that. And their brains don't even have to think about it anymore. Okay? So they're not having to give brain space to consider what is happening next. They know what to expect. And that means there's a lot more room for them to focus on the academics and what I'm trying to actually teach to them. I really like to work on that in the younger years because it just flows into this beautiful rhythm as the kids get older. And I will tell you that you're going to get a whole lot less pushback from your kids when they know what is expected of them. Just think about it as an adult. Most of us struggle when we do not know what is expected of us. And I'm not just talking about like, there are days where you don't have any plans or whatever and there's no real expectation, but I'm just talking about what the expectations are of you, where you need to be at any given time. If you don't have that information, it makes life stressful. It makes you have to keep track of a lot more things than you would have to if you already knew what the plan was. So personally, I think it's unfair to put that on kids. I think that we do them a disservice when we don't give them an idea of what the day is going to look like. And I think that it goes too far in the other direction. We don't have to have rigid schedules. You can fly by the seat of your pants as far as like homeschool breaks and when you're going to take a week off or whatever. I mean, we do that to some extent. I kind of have them penciled in, but we change it as the year goes on because life happens. But I do think it's really important and vital for children to have some sort of expectation as to the flow of the day and what they can expect. If you're getting a lot of pushback from your kids and you have not had this implemented, I'm going to seriously recommend that you try it. Show them, this is what our days are going to look like. This is where I expect you to be at this time. I expect chores to be done by this time. It gives them personal responsibility, but it also gives them security and comfort. I know this because it's how my mom homeschooled us, and I'm so grateful for it because it translated so well into my adult years and running a home and all the other things. It's helped me to be a lot more disciplined with my time, and I'm just really grateful for that. So that's my advice, take it or leave it, but I really do push back on the idea that schedules are harmful. And the fifth one may be my most controversial one, and it's definitely going to have some caveats, but it is that there's no such thing as behind. I see this all the time online where mom's like, oh, I think we're behind. And someone's like, behind who? Who are we behind? And I understand the hype behind it. I really do. Because I do think that it is not helpful for homeschool parents to be like, my child is in this grade and therefore this is the work that they should be doing. If they're not capable of doing that, some kids are gifted, some kids struggle a bit more, and we need to meet them where they're at. Like I said, homeschool the child that's in front of you. However, again, we've got to be really careful we do not use this whole thing of there's no such thing as behind as an excuse to be lazy. Because sometimes we can do that. We can fall into this idea of, okay, well, we're having kind of an off week, so we'll do it next week. And then life happens next week, and so we don't do it next week, and we fall into this rhythm of just constantly pushing it off. Yes, the reality is that we need to focus on our children and what they need and where their skill set is. But if they are behind their peers and you know that they are capable of catching up to their peers, then we should be working to make forward motion in that. It shouldn't just be a case of, we're not there. Well, that's okay. It's all right that they're not up to their peers. If we're not making any effort to move forward, then that is problematic. And you do not want your child turning around when they're older and having resentment toward you because you were capable of pushing them further and you didn't because we had excuse after excuse. And I'm not saying this from a place of judgment. I know life happens. I know things can be really hard. I've lived through some really hard stuff while homeschooling my kids. I know what it's like to homeschool with babies and toddlers and big health issues and moving house and, all these things happen in life and it's hard. And there are seasons where you take time off and you come back to things. But generally speaking, we should be moving forward. And I'm not talking about kids who have learning challenges here, although I would still say, and I think that any mother with a child with learning challenges is probably already doing this, you still want to equip your child to the best of their capabilities. So even though they may never catch up to their peers, you still want to give them as many tools as you possibly can because that's going to make their life easier as they get older. So that's the mentality we need to have. We're working with our children where they're at and their skill set that they have, but we're always moving forward. And that's the key. We don't want to just have an excuse of, well, who cares if they're behind their peers? Like, it doesn't matter. It matters if it's going to be detrimental to your child in the future, and you could have done something now to avoid that. So that's kind of my heart behind it. I don't want that to be guilt-inducing or in the sense of you sitting there and thinking, like, I'm a terrible mother, like I should be working harder. That's not what that's meant to be. It's just a gentle encouragement and a challenge to make sure that our intentions are right and that we're having a broader view over it than just what is happening here and now. There are ways to keep our kids moving forward without having to do these, massive shifts in schedule and all that kind of stuff. But if we're honest with ourselves, I do think that it's easier to keep our kids moving forward than we think it is. And their education is really important. This is an important thing. This is going to impact them as they get older. And I don't think this is not me speaking to there being gaps, because there are always going to be gaps eventually. Like, that's just life. You cannot teach everything and never ever have any gaps. But there are some big basic things that our kids need to be equipped with, and that's what I'm talking about. So there we go. Those are all of the things that I wanted to address. I'm sure there are more out there. If you have heard some that kind of rattle you and make you a bit annoyed, go ahead and drop them in the comments below because I would love to hear from you and your thoughts on that. Again, I hope this is helpful and encouraging. If you're feeling less than or whatever, just remember that the online world is very much not the real world. And I have been homeschooling quite a while now. I was homeschooled, and I can tell you that what homeschooling looked like for me as a child is really not very different to how it looks for my kids, because we're still dealing with humans who have, you know, a human nature that wants our own way, and that's just life. But it's also wonderful, and I'm so grateful for it. So thank you for watching, my friends, and I will see you next time. Bye.